Hello. Welcome everyone to the latest edition of the MMA Fighting Rankings podcast. I am your host, Alexander K. Lee, and we are here to talk about the hottest charts in all of sports, the MMA Fighting Global Rankings, the MMA Fighting Pound for Pound Rankings, and a bunch of other topics that I feel like need to be touched upon that are like rankings adjacent. It was a hell of a month in October. We had two pay-per-view guys, UFC 307, UFC 308, three pay-per-views, PFL, Battle of the Giants, Super Fight, Brace for Impact, Ngannou versus Pereira, whatever other name presented by Riyadh season. So a lot of movement, guys, a lot of movement on, again, pound for pound, men's, women's, divisions, top to bottom. It was eventful. It was eventful. We saw some things we never thought we'd see. We saw some old friends returning to hitting. It was a good time. And there was a lot of movement here to go over some of these seismic changes, guys, that we have witnessed in our business. First, I'd like to introduce one of my co-hosts, Delicious Damon Martin.
That's a new nickname. I don't know that I really like Delicious, but I'm here. That's
You know, if the shoe fits, I say. Also providing commentary for the rankings today, we've got juicy Jed Meshew.
I don't know what's happening right now. I was not prepared for this to be the start of the day.
And in the truck, as always, providing expert reduction, comely EKC Leydon. Look it up, people. Look it up.
I thought you were going to go crispy Casey Leydon, maybe.
Great start.
I think so.
Did you like not eat lunch today? Like,
I do feel a little lightheaded.
Your blood sugar low?
Before we break it down to specific topics, we should go over some of the movements that people may see when they see the division's rankings post. I think by the time this show is out. And if not, listen, we're giving you a quick recap. We'll have some fancy graphics up on the screen. For the first big movement, we had Khamzat Chimaev jumping up 10 spots, guys, in the middleweight rankings. I don't know if we need to explain this. The only thing we need to explain is maybe why was he so low in the first place. Obviously played by inactivity, a few inconsistent results, but he came back in a big way after being off for a year. Destroys Robert Whittaker. There's really no nice way to put it. You guys saw the pictures. We don't need to go over those again. Our biggest mover of the month, Khamzat, by far. Kamar Usman is out of the rankings. You guys some of our listeners and viewers may find that strange. He was number 4 at 170 pounds. And didn't he just fight a year ago against Khamzat in a middleweight bout? However, he has not been competing at 170 pounds. It's been, March 2023, Kamaru's last welterweight bout, and actually doesn't have a win at 170 pounds since November 2021. So think about that. So that is our justification, you guys, when you see no Usman. Juliana Pena back. I'm not sure what else needs to be said about that. She is the women's bantamweight champion again, her first fight since July 2022. Some of you may find it weird that she is not number 1. So she goes from not ranked to number 2 at 135 pounds behind Kayla Harrison. You guys can debate that amongst yourselves. And some of our other bigger movers, Fluffy Hernandez re-entering the middleweight ranks at number 9. Sounds like a crazy jump, but he was like hovering around the 15, 16, 17 spot. Strawweight Yasmin Lucindo up 7 spots, number 7, after beating Marina Rodriguez. And Paul Hughes, Irish lightweight, Paul Hughes making a massive PFL debut win over AJ McKee, and he is now our number 13 ranked 155er, coming out of nowhere. Very impressive. I'll also make note, Mauro Bautista, big win, big split decision win. Making his debut, I think he might have been around 15 before, but number 11. So re-entering the charts at number 11, 3 spots behind the man that he won a decision against, Jose Aldo. So I guess now, off of that note, guys, I just want to ask, speak freely. Is there any of these moves? Did they surprise you? Did they delight you? Did they upset you? Did we get any of these egregiously wrong?
we didn't get this wrong. I just want to say, Mario Bautista, you better watch out, because the last man who took a bullshit robbery decision over Jose Aldo, he never won a fight again. His career cratered and he lost 8 fights in a row or whatever the hell Marlon Moraes' end of career looked like. So look out, because that's kind of where you're looking to be. That's why you're so low in our rankings, I guess. I did put him above Aldo because I respect the process, but my heart feels good that other people didn't do that.
I mean, Merab also kind of won a shaky decision. He's doing okay. He's doing
No,
all right.
Merab just fought without honor. The decision's not that bad, but he fought without honor, much like Mr. Batista did.
And also,
Damon, yeah, go ahead.
To your point about Chimaev, I mean, listen, he deserves it now, but as far as him being ranked lower before, I mean, his only real statement win at middleweight was over a welterweight and Kamar Usman on short notice. So that's why he wasn't ranked. It's not that we didn't think he was good. It's just his last win over like a good middleweight was Gerald Mearshart like 4 years ago, whatever, and then Usman, who is a welterweight. So,
Sir,
that's
he
why
beat Ikram Aliskerov. Thank you very much.
Like that was before he's even in the UFC, though.
Yeah, it was like 5 years ago.
Yeah. So, but I'm not saying we need to justify it. I'm just saying like we're like, wow, that's a dramatic jump. That's why, because he didn't fight any middleweights, and so. Now you do what you did to Robert Whittaker, then you absolutely deserve that jump in the rankings. And I'm a little saddened that Juliana Pena is number 2, but you know, what can you do?
I was going to ask you to
happy
comment.
that she's number 2.
Like I was going to ask you to comment, Damon,
she just
because
snuck in at number 2 also.
You almost made her number 3. We should point out you did not agree with the Pennington Pena decision.
Nope.
You are very publicly, I think people can look at your social media. You're not Juliana Pena's biggest cheerleader. I feel like you've poked some holes in her resume, some might say. Do you want to tell people where you ranked her and why she's just hanging on to the number 2 spot despite being the UFC champion?
I put her at number 5.
Wow.
Overall, number 5. I had Kayla Harrison 1, Pennington 2, Holly Holm 3, Norma Dumont 4, Juliana Pena 5. My justification for that is that I didn't think she won the decision over Raquel Pennington, and she doesn't have a single win over anyone else on the current active UFC roster. So it's hard for me to justify, listen, women's bantamweight is not good, so I can't keep her out of the rankings because there's just not 15 names justifiable to keep above her, but I don't think she beat Raquel Pennington, and she doesn't have a single win over anyone else on the current active UFC roster. So it's hard for me to put her at number 2 based upon that. Do I think that she could beat Holly Holm, Norma Dumont? Maybe. I don't know. But I don't think she deserves a higher ranking based on that particular performance.
The @ is on the screen. You guys saw that @ Damon Martin. For all the Venezuelan vixen villains out there, you know who to go after. There's dozens of them, Damon. There's dozens, and they are going to come after you for this spicy take.
Listen.
Overselling.
If Juliana Pena beats Kayla Harrison, which I am not predicting her to do, but if she does, I will absolutely rank her number 1 in the world. But until that happens, you're staying at number 5, or potentially lower, depending on what happens behind you in the division.
I didn't mean to move on from Chimaev talk so quickly. I mean, we love Juliana Pena talk, obviously, but people will see on the graphic that there is 5 votes for Dricus du Plessis, the current champion, and there's 1 vote for one Mr. Khamzat Chimaev. Would the gentlemen on our panel who did this like to raise their hand and just talk a little bit about Chimaev being number 1?
Who, me? Simply put, if they fought head to head, I'm picking Chimaev. Normally, I kind of give the champion, kind of the veteran, who person like a. Oh wait, I'm seeing someone shake their head already at me. I don't know. If they fought head to head, I'll give it to Chimaev, and since there's no one else there. I don't know. He's just I have DDP at number 2. It's not like I have him at 3 or 4. I'm not treating him like Julia Pena, but I just have Chimaev at 1. I mean, I just think he's a better fighter. But I don't know. Chime in, Jed. I mean, a couple of us have Shavkat ranked above Belal. I feel it's not too much different.
Yeah, same vibes.
Yeah, same vibes. Yeah.
I'm disgusted in you, Casey. One, you don't have Shavkat ranked above Belal,
And I know.
so don't come at me with that. And two, this is just disrespect for Dricus du Plessis. That's all this is. You're not doing this in other weight classes because I'm not opposed to doing this. That is the large guiding principle of my
I have
rankings.
Pennington.
But
I
you're
have
not-
Pennington above Pena.
But you're not doing this in other weight classes. You're doing it in the other weight classes where you don't respect the person who's the champion because you don't respect Pena, so you're doing it with Pennington. Because you don't respect Dricus because he's weird, and so you're like, all right, he's the guy I'll disrespect. And I just want it to be known that Still Knox is the king, and y'all are all haters, and everybody just does it. You know what? You guys don't, you're doubting him, and we know what happens when everybody doubts him. And so this is for you, Casey, when he goes out here and he defends against Khamzat, and it looks very silly because he's a very silly man. I want you to know that I told you so back in October.
I just love that Jed has become like the number one DDP guy, I think. And I'm not saying you did anything wrong by changing your view, because I think a lot of us changed our view on DDP's capabilities. But there was a time when you were laughing at the prospect of DDP someday becoming UFC champion. You thought Robert Whittaker was going to annihilate him. You didn't want to see that fight because you thought it was going to interfere with a possible Izzy DDP thing. But again, and then
I picked him to beat Whittaker. We're clear.
Yes, you did. When eventually you did. But it is amazing. It is amazing that I feel like you've had to tilt the other way because of how sort of skeptical you were at first with his his championship.
No, just because he's just the funniest fighter, and everybody hates him because he is the funniest fighter. But that makes me love him. That he just like very clearly is bad at a lot of things, and it doesn't matter. And it's really funny, and that's straight up, Casey. Like that's why if this was a similarly accomplished fighter who didn't look the way he does when he wins fights, you'd be like, okay, he beat Izzy. He beat Robert Whittaker. He beat I'm drawing blanks now. Darren Till is like whatever. Derek Brunson. Yep. Like he's finished all these dudes. Like he's not just beating them, he's finishing all these dudes. And if you just looked on paper and didn't actually watch the fights, you'd be like, I got to give it to what he's accomplished. But you can't help but watch his fights and be like, that just can't be the best middleweight in the world. It just can't be him.
I need some like troll to make like a Dricus du Plessis like lowlights package, because I feel like if you took some of the worst moments from his fights that he won, but if you put them together and you watch them, you'd be like, well, this guy's bad. Like there's no way this guy won this fight, or there's no way this guy went on to become UFC champion. But it's like, no, he won these fights where someone looked like he was down, or he was gasping, or he was flailing.
Let me tell you, not only did he become champion, he has wins over 3 of the top 5 middleweights right now.
Pretty good.
Not including himself and now Khamzat Chimaev.
Well, he may be part of this next section, guys, I want to talk about. Not directly, but we'll get there.
Before we jump off middleweight real quick,
please,
I have a question. Wait, how are we, as a group, handling Kamar Usman? Because he seems to be the most confusing. Because I just realized, like, technically, he's still within the 18-month, right? He's not out, right?
He is within 18 months of a middleweight fight. Yes, of a middleweight fight. But do any of us have him ranked at middleweight? No.
Nope.
I believe
that's the thing is, like, I know he's a top 15 middleweight, and I realized I didn't rank him. Like I would pick him beating Michel Pereira.
He did receive votes after that fight. I distinctly remember he appeared at least on 1 or 2 bouts. He was a fighter also receiving votes. So he was there. It's just that he hasn't fought since, and the middleweight division has actually moved quite a bit. So he just kind of got knocked off. Like he was on people's ballots for, I think, a couple of ranking cycles.
It's not just that he hasn't fought. He has not won, AK as you put it, since 2021.
It's been a while.
And his wins are Colby Covington, who also doesn't really have meaningful wins at this stage of his career. Jorge Masvidal, retired-ish and whatever. Gilbert Burns, still like a relatively meaningful welterweight win, though it was certainly better at the time than it kind of counts as for being now. Then Masvidal and Covington again. Like it's He just hasn't. He's in that stage of his career where he's not fighting that much, and he's going to pick his spots. And so I was comfortable just leaving him off until he just beats somebody like that is relevant to today's mixed martial arts.
Yeah, Casey, I'm with you. I would pick him to beat a number of middleweights, but he's he doesn't need to. He's made a lot of money. He's very successful. He doesn't need. I don't think he needs to get back in there.
It's kind of a unique situation with him.
But he could. Sir, he could certainly be ranked a 185. I don't think that's controversial.
I'll tell you this: if Kamaru comes back and beats any ranked middleweight, and I think he's going to come back as a welterweight, but I'm just saying, if he comes back and beats any ranked middleweight, I'll probably end up putting him top 5 or 6 because his performance against Chimaev looks that much better now from what Chimaev did to Whitaker. Because I don't care, he took it on 10 days' notice. He went up a weight class, and he was. If that had gone 5 rounds, I 100% believe Kamar Usman would on that fight. Like, he was winning late in the fight, and Chimaev was wasted. He was so burnt, and Kamar just couldn't put him away. He got a majority decision. So all I need Kamar to do is, if he's going to do middleweight, get 1 win, and you'll probably be in my top 5 or 6. Like, not kidding.
I would really like Kamar to fight Robert Whitaker, but I don't think that can happen now.
I know. That's a dream fight. It just makes so much sense. It makes so much sense for both of them. I want to move on to pound for pound talk, guys. It's cooking, man. It's cooking. I was going to say this division, but this list, this chart is so compelling right now. Jed, as I think you put on the post-fight show, it's kind of fun to just put number 1, whichever guy you just saw last put on an amazing performance, right? Like, it sounds flippant, but also when it's this close, like the margins are this small, it's like, yeah, you could say Makhachev's number 1. You could say Pereira's number 1. You could say Topuria's number 1. So we got a bit of a mix here. I don't know if we have anyone. Oh, we do. Oh, we don't have. Okay, sorry. We have on our chart 4 people have Makhachev number 1. 1 has Alex Pereira number 1. 1 has Topuria number 1. I will say the Alex Pereira vote is not here. That is our own Guilherme Cruz, obvious Brazilian bias, but you can't argue too much against it. Damon, you and I have Makhachev. Casey, you have Makhachev. Jed, you have Ilia. So let's talk about it. I know we've already talked about post-fight show and all this stuff, but we're a few days removed from the event. We've had some room to breathe. Who's number 1? Damon, who's number 1 and why?
I still have Islam ranked number 1, although I have actually weirdly less of an issue with Jed having Ilia number 1 than I do with Alex number 1 right now, just because of the level of competition. Same reason I think Ilia Topuria is already locked up fighter of the year, because when you knock out Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway in the same year, you deserve all the flowers. So I have less of an issue with him. But Islam to me is still number 1 because just longevity. He's been doing it longer, and he's just on this incredible win streak. And I mean, somehow he lost a round or whatever to Dustin Poirier, but the guy he goes out there and absolutely mauls everybody. And yes, I know he had a couple of tough rounds with Volkanovski, but he also, he still ultimately won that fight. And at that point, Volkanovski was number 2 pound for pound in the world, or number 1 pound for pound in the world, or whatever it was. So I still put Islam mostly based upon longevity and how long his streak has been going. And again, it's not like he's been beating bums. I mean, I know Dana loves to say that, he beat a smaller guy. That's not how this works. You beat a guy who's good. He went up in weight. I don't think Volkanovski would sit there and say, man, I was a sucky lightweight. Like, he went up and took a shot. He had a great fight against the number 1 guy in the world, and he took him to the distance. And then obviously took the rematch on short notice and got head kicked out of the building. So Islam's still my pick based on that. Again, he's beating good guys. He's dominating what he did to Charles Oliveira, so on and so forth, what he did to Dustin Poirier. And he's just been doing it on this incredibly long streak since he lost to, who was it, Lucas Martins or whatever, like 9 years ago. So yeah, that to me is still there, but I see an argument for Ilia, just not quite yet. I wouldn't put him there yet.
Yeah, Ilia and Islam obviously both in maybe the 2 best divisions in all MMA. Again, you throw bantamweight in there too, but it's what gives them a case over Pereira, certainly. But Pereira has been such a popular choice for pound, either number 1 or number 2 most of the year. And here comes Topuria. Casey, you moved Topuria up to number 2. How close were you? How close were you to maybe unseating Makhachev, or was it no way? It was no way he was going to be number 1.
I just think it was just too much of a jump for him to go from where did I have him at before, probably like somewhere in the top 10, the back half top 10. So he had a big jump, and I was just, Topuria is freaking awesome. And if we had a 1A, a 1B for pound king right now, I would have no issue giving it to Islam and Topuria. But I pretty much agree with what Damon said. since they're so kind of close, I kind of went with just the guy with the longer, better resume. And Topuria will probably achieve that same sort of status on his resume soon. It's just take a little time, but dude, number 2. That's a heck of an accomplishment. I'm going from number 10 on my list, number 2. So, but Islam's still number 1 for me.
Jed, you pulled the trigger. You said Ilia number 1. Let's effing do this. Go ahead. I mean, again, you've had a chance to talk about this a bit, but let's elaborate further. Let's go. How is he over Pereira, and how is he over Makhachev, and whoever else in contention?
So I don't have any issues with any of those 3. It's honestly like the boxing pound for pound debate right now. There are 3 men that have separated themselves out in boxing, in Usyk, Inoue, and Bud Crawford. And basically, however you want to mix and match those 3 is personal preference and taste, and that's fine. I think it's exactly the same here. I think it is only those 3 men who of Pereira, Ilia, and Islam, and kind of however you want to go. I opted to go with Topuria for a couple of reasons. One, because I am of the opinion that pound for pound can be more fluid than I think most people are, where to me it should be more a reflection of like recency bias in some extent. Not like, oh, this guy just won, but like, hey, are there several fighters who are dominant champions or have unbelievable things? Okay, they can kind of pass this off between each other as one is competing more often. And Islam Makhachev is my number 2 because of the long tenure of his career and where he has been. His dominance at this point over division is, I'll get to that in a second. Gun to my head, I think Alex Pereira is pretty clearly beneath Islam and Ilia for me, both because light heavyweight is just a much worse division than lightweight and featherweight are. And he got knocked out last year. Like, I know that we don't talk about that because it's not, who cares? Like, he went up to light heavyweight and look what he's doing. He got knocked out within like the past 18 months or whatever. And it's an incredible accomplishment to then rebound from that to do what he has done. But again, if we are parsing between very good resumes, the strength of schedule is not the same. It's, God love Jan Blachowicz. He ain't nearly the quality of fighter as like Josh Emmett, despite being a former champion. Like Yuri Prochazka, I love Yuri Prochazka like my own child. And it is clear to me that he is just stylistically kryptonite against Alex Pereira. He's just going to get booped every time. Khalil Roundtree, fun story. It was an exciting fight. Come on, man. Like, we don't have to pretend that is like one of the best best things on his resume. That's one of the worst wins on Pereira's resume at this point in time. And Jamal Hill is this sort of outlier who maybe is good, but also maybe just had one really good night and things broke very well for him against Glover Teixeira. When you look at that, I think Pereira really falls short of Makhachev and Topuria. But if you want to credit him for being a former middleweight champion, being on this hell of a run, I won't push back. I just don't agree. To me, the difference between Makhachev and Topuria for this vote, and if Makhachev goes and defends his title in January, as the kind of rumors are against Arman Tsarukyan, it is the recency of what has happened, because the totality of their resume, sure, give me Makhachev at this point in time. Within the past 18 months or 2 years, whatever the timeline you kind of want to go with, Ilia Topuria has knocked out 2 of, by my estimation, the 10 or 15 best fighters ever. Max Holloway got knocked out for the first time ever, a thing that I truly didn't think could happen. And maybe if he just wins a decision, maybe that's not enough. But knocking out Max Holloway, that gets you a little extra spice, a little extra sauce on there, boys. And Islam, again, there has been no higher proponent of Islam Makhachev than I have. His lightweight title run is good, but weird. And I think we can all acknowledge it. We knew the Volk fight, the first one, okay, timing. That's still a featherweight. Yes, he fought at lightweight. Yes, he'd be a good lightweight. Would and could ain't it. Like he was the featherweight champion. That's not quite the same. The rematch, odd circumstances, that that is even less meaningful than the first one. And then we all love Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier is still one of the 5 best lightweights in the world. Still weird circumstances. These are not ironclad title defenses. You can poke holes in these in a way that you cannot with what Topuria has done. And so because of that, because of the dominant performances, because he finished 2 dudes who have never been finished in this weight class and are all-time great fighters, I think that's enough to give him the number 1 spot. And it's not a big jump for me either. I previously had him at number 3. I bumped him back as other people got wins and I was trying to keep things fluid. But I said this on our post show, and I've thought about this a lot, and I'd love y'all's opinion if you have it here. I am not sure that there has ever in the history of this sport been a better 2-fight series of wins. Not a better fight, not a better run or a better year, back-to-back wins than what Ilia Topuria has done this year. Because Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway, I will put that up there against any other 2-fight stretch in the history of the sport.
Yeah, knocking out 2 Hall of Famers in their still relative primes in championship fights. Yeah.
And
that's tough.
Not just knocking them out with relative ease. Yes, he lost rounds, but those fights were like, you go rewatch them. It is not, that was a war. It was time was ticking until he lowered the boom. It is as impressive a 2-fight stretch as you will ever find. And that was enough just to give him. When, like I said, Islam goes and defends his belt against Arman Tsarukyan. That's an unbelievable win. And he'll probably jump back to the top spot. For now, give it to Ilia.
Yeah. No, I think Jed makes really great arguments. I just don't want to punish Islam, I guess, by bumping him for number 1 based on prize fighting, essentially, based on he just took the biggest fights that the UFC gave him. And I don't want to punish him for that. But I do admit that, yeah, the title run is odd. But
it's been a little wonky.
But that's just kind of the way the 55 division is and the way the UFC wants to book title fights. But so I don't want to punish him for that, but I think Jed makes great points, actually.
Okay, I've never heard you say that about Jed so many times. That was amazing. I'm just looking at like some of the great champions.
I'll edit this part out. Don't worry.
Please. GSP has like BJ Penn, Matt Hughes back to back, but this was the first Penn win, which was not a dominant performance by GSP to put it nicely. And Matt Hughes also sucks. So I mean, again, maybe not the best, but at the time, a pretty incredible.
I didn't think GSP won that first Penn fight.
A lot of people would agree with you. A lot of people would agree with you, and I refuse to review that fight for Robert review. I won't do it.
There is one out there because there was a little bit of discussion on Twitter about this, and the one that it's different just because of the eras. Coincidentally, it is BJ. BJ beating Gomi into Matt Hughes at the time. That was like the numbers 1 and 2 pound for pound fighters in the sport, or like very high up on the pound for pound list. That's a really good one, but like that's not the same as that. That's a bygone era versus current modern MMA. So
I'm looking at like Fedor. He never really fought 2 like amazing heavyweights back to back. Like he fought a lot of great heavyweights in a short period of time, rarely back to back. Because Pride was so crazy back then. You could go from fighting. I'm looking right. I was just about to say off the top of my head. Yeah. You go from fighting Crow Cop, and your next fight you fight Zulu Zinho, and it's like, you know what? I love Zulu, but it's not a very strange 2-fight pairing. So. Max and Volkanovski is pretty good. Yeah,
the timing has to be great, and the positions of the divisions have to be really set up perfectly. And Topuria was just the timing is perfect for him, and to where he is in his career, and where Max and Volk were in their careers. So I can't off the top of my head, I cannot think of a better 2-fight stretch.
I mean,
go ahead,
Jon Jones beating Vitor and Chael Sonnen back to back is pretty damn impressive, guys. Come on now.
That was so weird.
Now I was looking at Jones because like Jones' record, he's beaten like so many great champions, but they're just like nothing in a streak of that, like not in like a 2-fight streak like that, like not in that like beating Shogun, beating Rampage, beating Machida, beating Rashad. All those are great wins, but just nothing back to back.
The totality of that is amazing.
Yeah,
but
it's
like,
just but not the
too.
Yeah, Jones is the one, like, totality-wise, he has, like, a ridiculous resume, which is why I call him the greatest of all time. But, yeah, just not that too. I mean, that's like when I did the podcast with Matt Brown, he's like, the reason why he has the reason why he said that Topuria is locked up fight of the year is because as good as Alex has been in 3 fights, he didn't do it against Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski. And I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I was super impressed by knocking out 3 guys in basically 6 months. He did that between April and October. That is incredibly impressive. But I like Jamal Hill. I like Yuri. I like Khalil. That's not Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway. So, yeah, like, 2-fight streak, I don't think it's matched. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I do like the BJ Penn one, but even that, I would still argue, like, because I like Gomi, but I maybe there's a little bit of revisionist history on Gomi now. But, yeah, I think Topuria beating Max and Alex back to back and knocking them both out is ridiculous.
Here are the ones that I'm open to a conversation, though I don't think they're. And it's Anderson. Like, it's going to be the guys you would think, right? Anderson, Rich Franklin, Dan Henderson back to back. That's a pretty good one. It's the second Rich Franklin.
I was like, if he hadn't already annihilated Franklin,
you lose a little bit just because it was the exact same demolition. If you're doing John, I think it has to be Shogun Rampage. But like, I was a fan during that, and I remember Shogun like, yes, he won the belt. No one was convinced we were in for a long Shogun reign. Like, he had just gotten weird at that point, particularly coming over from Pride. Aldo is the one that I would argue is there, and it's Chad Frankie won. So the Chad Mendez KO knockout and Frankie Edgar, like, that's a really good stretch, but it ain't Max and Alex, like.
This is
Chad Frankie is a solid second choice.
Yeah.
Two actually, I feel like Chad Mendez would have been a Hall of Famer if he just didn't have Aldo existing.
Yeah.
So it kind of sucks because Chad Mendez kind of never reached his full prize fight potential because he came around when Aldo was around. But yeah, Aldo, I agree. Mendez, Edgar's a really good choice. Especially, he went to decision, right, with Edgar?
He did. That was, that was not a competitive decision. Here's another one, Casey, and this is a throwback to not you, but you and me. And it's obviously a little different. It's Max Holloway beating Jose Aldo twice in a year. That is also because that's the greatest featherweight of all time. He dusted him up twice in a year. But this is just, there's not a lot of precedent to what has happened this year.
I just want to add my favorite, Sokoju beating Little Nog and Arona back to back. People nowhere near the top of like the most but like as far like this is a classic, and Sokoju's not going to get his own damn they were good episode, but like this is a classic in the moment. And this is, by the way, this is when I was like sort of just getting into my like MMA fandom. Like I missed most of the Pride era. Like as it happened, I've gone back, of course, to catch up. But this was when I was getting into UFC and MMA a lot. And like when these 2 knockouts happened, everyone was talking about it. They hyped him up so much in the UFC debut. Like, this is the guy, like, holy crap, he just destroyed 2 of Pride's best fighters, like, not both of them under a minute. He's the next dude. And then the first guy he fights in the UFC is Lyoto Machida, who just washes
and nobody
him.
knew how good Lyoto Machida was.
No,
actually.
no one knew.
Because I was actually friends with the people that managed Sokoju at the time, and they were just like, why did no one tell us how good he was? No one knew. Like, we saw footage of him. No one knew how good he was. Yeah.
All you had to do was watch the Rich Franklin fight when Machida wrecked Rich Franklin over in Japan. Like that should have been your clue, because Machida was that dude. I'll throw this, like, it's not a 2-fight streak, but man, talk about 4 fights. Like Shogun going through Rampage, Little Nog, Alistair, and Arona. Like, I don't know if Rampage and Little Nog are as good because at that point maybe, but man, that streak that Shogun had in Pride was pretty damn impressive.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. The Shogun, what year was the final conflict? Is that 05, 06?
05, yeah. 05.
05.
Yeah,
it's the 05. Like, that year is unbelievable. John's 2011 is unbelievable. I just think that Topuria's year doesn't have the same volume. It's only 2 fights. put it right up there, man. Like it is one of the most impressive years I have ever watched of this sport.
I'm gonna have to I'm not trying to beat it. I'm just like I'm just racking my brain.
Dude, I've tried. I spent some time. It was like it is a hard ass.
That's a really good question. I'm like, you're probably right. You're absolutely probably right. I'm just like thinking in my head, like who, like, because it's never like I was thinking when you said Aldo, I was like Conor knocking out Aldo, but then he had the stupid Nate Diaz thing in the middle before he beat Eddie Alvarez. So it's like those weren't back to back. Like those were, so it's like, yeah, doing it 2 in a row is not easy. So yeah, man, I'm gonna have to think about it. I thought about Shogun. That was the best one I could come up with.
Yeah, the Shogun 05 run, any of those that's a good argument. You can make a case for Rampage, Nog, Overeem, Morona, however you want to split that.
I do want to throw out. No, people are gonna hate this. Amanda Nunes, I think like Rousey,
dude.
Shevchenko.
I was about to mention.
I know the second.
I was literally about to mention Rousey.
Like, I know the Shevchenko fight, very close fight. You could absolutely a terrible fight also, by the way, horrible to rewatch. I always tell people always tell me like, oh, it was a robbery, and I'm like, you know what, maybe it was. I don't care. I've only rewatched it once to do a robbery review. I never want to watch it again. It's a terrible fight, but just from name value, and I also think Ronda Rousey is much better than people still give her credit for. Like retroactively, it's very easy to say like, oh, she was all hype and she sucked. I think like she actually was really good in her time. So name value and like legacy wise, having Rousey Shevchenko back to back is pretty crazy. But I mean, I
would actually argue that is not the one to go with for Nunes. I would say Cyborg Holly Holm back to back.
I was just getting ready to say the same. I was just getting ready to say the same thing.
And more
dominant finishes.
Yeah.
Dominant finishes as opposed to the Shevchenko thing. Like if she had knocked out Shevchenko, that one is so significant.
Huge.
But because she kind of didn't win it, you would convince me also that Tate to Rousey as opposed to Rousey to Shevchenko is Miesha Tate is a historically significant female fighter.
Nunes' run is crazy. Nunes'
two Hall of Famers in their relative prime and championship fights. Yeah, so I think Rousey has actually. I think we should throw Rousey in that conversation too, as far as 2 fight amazing runs.
Gentlemen, as much as I love to look back with you guys and reminisce with you guys, we need to look ahead a little bit here, because as great as Makhachev, Pereira, and Topuria are, we got some names coming up on them. So I want to ask you guys, looking ahead to we've got to say 2025. I mean, you can't say 2023, that'd be looking back. So looking ahead to the year that's coming, because that's how time works. Guys, who's going to break into this?
That is how time works,
man. I really should have eaten something today. I really should have eaten something. Yeah.
Time works.
Who breaks, guys? Who breaks into the conversation next for potentially for number one? We got, and I'm only throwing 3 names out there. I'm sure there could be others, especially again if some of the people who have title fights booked knock off the champion. But Du Plessis, Belal Muhammad, Tom Aspinall, 3 current champions. Only one of which has a fight actually booked. One of which we think we know who they're going to fight next. One of which is pretty much a wild card as to who his title defense could be against. So, Damon, I will throw to you first. Du Plessis, Muhammad, Aspinall, who has the best chance, not necessarily of being number one, but of having us talk about it like, he's got a case.
Well, I said this on my podcast, and I'll say it here. The only guy who could crack that fighter of the year argument this year, and I'm not saying he's going to beat, I'm just saying you put him in the conversation, is that Belal Muhammad beat Shavkat. Mm-hmm. Beating Leon and Shavkat in the same year is pretty damn impressive. I don't think it's better than Topuria doing what he did to Max and Holloway, but I'm just saying that. So Belal's the answer because he's on a huge win streak, hasn't been beaten, whatever it is, like 10, 11 fights, actually has wins over good contenders. Like he took out Vicente Luque when he was still a top 5 or 6 guy, took out Gilbert Burns when he was a top 3 or 4 guy, going out and dominating Leon Edwards the way he did. And if he pulls off the upset, I know everyone, it's going to be an upset to beat Shavkat because he is the underdog. If he can go out and beat Shavkat Rakhmonov, I don't want to hear, I know it's going to happen, but I don't want to hear, Shavkat wasn't ready. He wasn't as good as we thought he was. Stop. Okay. Shavkat is a monster. If he goes out and beats Shavkat Rakhmonov, he's in that conversation. I don't think because Belal, what hurts Belal is that he goes to a lot of decisions. If he was wrecking people the way that Pereira does or the way that Topuria does, I think we'd have a much different conversation. But I think if you go out and beat Leon Edwards and Shavkat in the same year, and you've got this, like at that point, I think it would be a 12-fight unbeaten streak or 13-fight unbeaten streak, you got to get in that conversation.
If he does to Shavkat what he did to Leon, I will be very curious what the fan reaction will be, because I guarantee if you ask anyone, most people right now, they would not put Belal anywhere near. I'm judging, by the way, based on like social media reaction stuff, because we put up, we put the rankings all over the place, and I'm always seeing comments. Why is Belal in the top 5? Why is Belal near the top 5? Like, people are just very down on him for a lot of the reasons you said, Casey. They want to see finishes. They want that signature moment. They want that big finish. He finished Sean Brady. I think that's the only recent finish he has. They don't like the decisions. But again, his win over Leon was dominant. It was nothing short of dominant. So I agree with you. I think he's closer to a number 1 talk than we think. But I do think it would have to be a dominant performance against Shavkat. What if Tom Aspinall somehow gets that Jon Jones fight? If he beats Jon Jones, is he would you throw him? Would he just fly all the way to number 1, Jed? What do you say?
I mean, in my heart, if he's the guy who beats Jon Jones, he would be there. Maybe. I'm very high on Tom Aspinall. I've had him ranked very high. I was excited for this segment because I got a big bone to pick with you about the list of fighters you proffered here.
Okay.
Because I think they're all wrong. I think the entire list of people you just gave, DDP, Aspinall, Belal, right? Yeah. If Belal wins, credit to him. He deserves to kind of be. I can't bring myself to say in the conversation because of the manner of his wins. Yes, he is winning and sometimes dominant, but like, you gotta finish somebody. You gotta finish a person to kind of ascend when the margins are this small, when the competition is so fierce in this discussion. If you want to be credible in there, you gotta finish someone. So honestly, based on how they fight, I think it is far more likely that Shavkat Rakhmonov, should he win, is a guy who kind of inserts himself into this 19 or 20-0 all finishes, finishing good competition, puts him in there. I will also notice that you left off Merab Dvalishvili. The same corollary as Belal applies for me, but if we're going to credit Belal for doing things, if Merab fights Umar and beats Umar, that is as good a resume as anybody else, if removing the finishing aspect of it. I mean, that dude has years unbeaten, monstrously good wins. You got to put him in there if we're going to be putting Belal. But the one that bothers me, AK, the one that really gets my goat,
Stipe.
This isn't your fault, AK, because this is bring me back to the big screen, Casey, because I am going to sit right here. And Casey, I'm actually looking at this. Never mind. You're safe.
Oh, good.
Okay. Excuse to everybody else for the disrespect to Alejandro Pantoja. I do not know what this man needs to do to get the love and respect he deserves other than way more than 125 pounds. He has 9 wins in total over ranked fighters in our rankings. Nobody else has close to that. He has 3 wins over the number 4 guy that many people think should still be the number 2 guy. He has 2 wins over the number 2 guy. He's beaten the number 10, the number 11. Like, I do not know what you want from Pantoja other than be heavier, because all he has done is beat top dude after top dude. And sure, the Steve Erceg was tough. Like, that's his number 10 or whatever. Nobody really seems to be counting Alex Pereira out for him fighting like the number 14 dude. We got to start putting respect on Pants' name, because his run right now is just about as good as anybody else without adding another title defense, whoever that, not even whoever. He's got Kaya Sakura coming up. Like, he beats Kaya Sakura in December. The man needs to be number 3 or 4 on people's lists. Like, he deserves that.
Listen, Jed, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. But let's if he beats Kaya Sakura, we know Kaya Sakura is great. There are very few people who will be convinced that win moves Pantoja up in the pound for pound rankings. It will be a very hard argument.
Haters.
That's fine. Haters. But like, you have him at 4. I would be surprised if he dominates Kaya Sakura if you put him higher than Pereira, Makhachev, or Topuria. I just don't think he would do it.
I won't put him number 1, but he'll be in the talk.
You'd put him above Pereira.
I might.
I got him above.
It's
Because
really,
you're talking a big game here. You're talking a big game here of getting respect on his name.
I mean,
he has to pass
it's
one of
really
these people.
going to
Then if he
depend
beats
how the
Askar.
fight goes. If it's nip tuck, no. If he
Okay, but if he
just
dominates,
rinses him, he's probably getting my number 3 spot.
I will hold you to
But
this.
I
And you'll
wanna-
have
I
Pereira
wanna-
number 4. Well, damn it, I got to refute all of Jed's points here first because he called me out specifically, Damon. I'm sorry, one second. He called me out specifically. You have him number 4, so you will bump down Alex Pereira to number 4. Good luck explaining that to America because again, most people will have him either 1 or 2. So you will have him number 4. I'm just saying, you be ready. We'll be ready for that.
Light heavyweight's a bad weight class. I'm sorry.
This is true, and I agree. That's
why-
it's a
that's
garbage,
why I have-
it's a
that's why I
garbage
prefer-
division.
That's why I
And-
prefer 5.
I like the cases for Umar and Shavkat. Excuse me. You have Shavkat at 11 right now, so that would be a monster jump to number. And only Belal you only have at 7, at 8. Excuse me. So that'd be a monster. He beats the number 8 pound for pound guy, and you make him like top 3 off of that. That's a huge jump.
Yeah.
You could. And Umar,
If Shavkat finishes Belal, he is going to be in my top 3.
Umar,
sure.
you don't even have ranked. You don't even have in your pound for pound. So you would take Umar from unranked, beating your number 9 pound for pound guy, and if he beats him, he would be in the top 3.
That's an oversight in my pound for pounds.
All right, I'm just saying. That's all I have to say.
We
Damon,
do these relatively quickly.
We do.
Particularly after this past weekend, which was incredibly busy, and that's a firm oversight on my part.
He can, you know what? You can correct it soon. I mean, we have a pay-per-view coming up in like 2 weeks. Damon, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop you. Please.
I just want to poke a couple holes in your Pantoja thing here because Pantoja's on a 6-fight win streak. His last loss was in 2020, so 4 years ago, against Askar Askarov. Now, I'm only comparing this to your argument against Belal Muhammad because you're saying Belal just, decisions and you're not good. I mean, you have Belal much lower. Manel Kopp is a good win. I agree, but I don't know that Manel Kopp is the guy we thought he was. I think, he's dropped a lot recently. Brandon Royval, obviously, those 2 wins are good. But again, 2 wins over the same guy. Alex Perez, I think we've all kind of figured out is not really that dude. He had a couple good fights in a row, and he just never really developed. Steve Erceg, yeah, close fight. We've also seen since then Steve Erceg didn't do so well. I'm not saying Pantoja isn't good. I think he's very good. But I think you can poke holes in that 6-fight win streak a lot easier than you can poke holes in Belal Muhammad's 12-fight unbeaten streak, because I think Belal has better wins when you look at Gilbert Burns, when you look at Vicente Luque, when you look at Leon Edwards, when you look at the fights he's taken. I would say Belal has a much stronger argument to be higher on that list than Alexandre Pantoja. I've always argued, my biggest argument of all time when I argued against Demetrius Johnson as one of the greatest of all time is that flyweight just isn't as deep, and it hasn't been as deep. And I wish we'd gotten to see maybe a rematch with Figueiredo, but Figueiredo beat him early on. And obviously, and again, the Askarov loss is out there, but I'm just saying you got Belal Muhammad ranked much lower. Belal Muhammad's resume, in my opinion, is much better than Alexandre Pantoja's. And when you look at, yes, he has submission wins over Perez, who again, I don't think is a top guy. And he has a submission win over Brandon Royval. That's a good win. That is. But I think knocking out Sean Brady is as good, if not better, of a win. Because I think Sean Brady is a beast, and he knocked him out. So I'm just saying, you're building up Pantoja on a 6-fight win streak and a loss to Askar Askarov versus Belal Muhammad, who's on a 12 or 13 fight, hasn't been beaten in like 7 years, and to me has more quality wins. So I'm just saying, I'm not trying to tear down Pantoja. I'm just saying, comparatively, Belal Muhammad has a much better resume.
This is just where we disagree because and again, it's because you're all weight bullies. You are all opposed to small men and think that they can't be good fighters because they're very small people. And I'm not. I'm an inclusive kind of guy. But I got to tell you, beating the desiccated husk of Wonder Boy doesn't do much for me. Beating Vicente Luque at this point doesn't do much for me. Hold on. God respect Gilbert Burns. You're old, not good anymore.
Hold on. The desiccated, the husk of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, I'm pretty sure Belal beat him in 2021. Your boy Shavkat just beat him last year, and that's the fight that's getting him the title shot. That's your guy Shavkat, the guy you say will be number 3 ranked in pound for pound if he wins.
If Shavkat beats Belal, yes. He's not there now.
But I'm saying You're mocking
Also,
the win over. You're mocking the win over.
I'm mocking laying on Wonder Boy for 3 rounds. I'm not mocking killing Wonder Boy because that's what you do to desiccated Huss. You stomp him out. You don't hold him down. You got to finish somebody. I don't know how he finished Sean Brady. I remember it happening and being like, maybe this is a new Belal. And it's not a new Belal. And he's going to keep getting docked until he learns to be a violent person instead of a very, very, very good fighter alone. He got to be violent. Pantoja's wins. I like when you said straight up, like this is the crux of the argument. When you said you think Sean Brady win is equivalent to Brandon Royval, I had a physical reaction. It was like, I don't think that's true at all. And I got respect for Sean Brady. I think Sean Brady is a good fighter. I don't think they are remotely the same level of quality because I think Brandon Royval is a very, very, very good fighter.
I think Brandon Royval is a very good fighter. I'm just saying, like, but I'm also looking at the overall resume. Again, we're talking about a 12 or 13 fight win streak versus 6 in a row. And again, you want to say, like, you want to look at 6 in a row. I'm saying Pantoja's 6 in a row are impressive, but you also got to take into account if you're looking backwards, and it's 4 years ago. It's not 10 years ago. It's 4 years ago. He got worked by Askar Askarov, who isn't even in the UFC anymore. That can't not count for something. That can't just that can't not matter when you look at who Belal has beaten over the last 12 fights and who he's got wins against and dominating. I understand he's not finishing everybody, but it's not like any of those fights were close. It's not like he went to a split decision with Stephen Thompson. He dominated Stephen Thompson for 3 rounds. Yes. And that was Stephen Thompson 4 years ago when Stephen Thompson was still higher ranked in the division. I'm just saying.
You're missing the point, Damon. He's boring. And I'm not going to respect him as a result of it.
I'm a little disappointed. You both made great arguments, and I don't mean to take a side, but I'm a little disappointed that you're disregarding the words of a great man, maybe the greatest man who ever lived. It doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning is winning. So, I mean, that's a strong case for Belal. I'm sorry.
The Dominic Toretto clause is you got me there.
Casey, I'm not taking side. I'm not taking side.
And Askarov,
I'm wrong. I admit it. I've been defeated.
Don't. That's not why I said that.
Askarov not being in the UFC isn't a fault of Pantoja. Askar should be in the UFC. He doesn't move the needle enough.
Outside the UFC.
There's no reason he's not in the UFC. He just doesn't.
Isn't he like the ACA champ now or some shit like that?
Yeah.
I think so.
He's 15-1. Yeah, he's only.
Yeah, I have him right. Casey, I want to go to you real quick. 6 months from now, again, could Du Plessis, Muhammad, Aspinall, or any of their challengers, are we talking about one of them in the top 3 or the case for number 1? Or, let's say this time next summer.
Why even asking Casey? Don't ask Casey about Dricus. He'll never respect Dricus.
Neither will I, apparently. I'm pretty low as well. But Casey, one of those names, really pick any of those names. But are we still talking, or are we still going to be talking about Makhachev, Topuria, Pantoja, Pereira? Is there going to be, are any of those other guys going to jump in there?
It's going to be Shavkat.
Oh wow!
Yeah, if Shavkat rolls through Belal. Then his streak of dominance, not just W's, but dominance could, if he rolls through Belal and just dominates and finishes Belal within, say, 2 rounds, doesn't really take any damage, I could easily see myself bumping him to 3 and pushing down Pantoja to number 4.
Damn. I'll go to a second. I'll go to a second. I just want to say, Casey is putting his money where his mouth is. He has Shavkat currently the highest on our pound for pound ballots. He has Shavkat number 9 right now, one spot behind Belal. So, I mean, he ain't blowing smoke. He is pushing the Shavkat agenda. Apologies, everyone, if there's a little bit of an abrupt cut there, maybe a mid-discussion cut. We'll have that sorted out. Our own Jed Meshew was betrayed by the power in his home. Hopefully we'll get him back. But as it is, we will carry on, guys. We'll carry on. We were sort of just talking about Casey, because I guess I get you get to have the final word on this. He was wondering, you and I actually both have DDP a little low, probably a little too low, because we both think middleweight sucks. And even though DDP, yes, has beaten the top guys at middleweight, no question. Great runs, Sean Strickland, Adesanya, Barb Whitaker. Just because I don't think the division is that strong. I have him 12. You have him 15. I know people will think we're crazy. But yes, I think he was questioning if he beats Chimaev in an impressive way. Let's say he loses the first round, but then outlasts him, either wins a dominant decision or finishes Chimaev. Will that be enough for you, Casey, to put him, jump him way up into the top 10, possibly closer to the top 5?
If he loses rounds against Chimaev, but yet still gets the win, he'll be pretty much in the same spot. I put a lot in the pound for pound rankings. I just put a lot more weight in the smaller guys. Weight and small, yeah. No pun intended. But if he can beat Chimaev in a way where he just completely dominates, outclasses him, that will move him up possibly into the top 10. But after that, I can't see any more.
I'll definitely put him in the top 10.
DDP has just lost too many rounds previously and that's why I have guys like Islam and Topuria so high. It's because not just the wins, just the violence, it's just the dominance to get to those wins too.
Listen, winning is winning. Winning is winning. Damon, winning
is winning in terms of championships and getting your W, but we're talking about rankings. That's a little different for me.
Damon, I'll let you have the last word on this segment because while still talking about DDP, if and you can touch on any other contenders you want, but if, let's say, Shavkat beats Belal and then Du Plessis goes on to beat Chimaev, will you vault Du Plessis over both those welterweights and have him, somewhere in the top 5?
Yeah, I absolutely would. I think Shavkat.
Oh, you already have him 5. You already have him 5. You have Du Plessis.
Yeah, I already have Dricus higher. And actually, I just realized I had a mistake on mine because I had Pantoja above Merab, and I shouldn't do that. I'd actually have Pantoja lower. So there's another knock on Jed, and he's not here right now. Yeah, I would. And listen, here's the thing. I think Shavkat beating Belal would be super impressive, but I still have questions about Shavkat's overall resume. I understand why he's getting the title shot, but I'm still not in love with it, only because his only real big top 10 win is Wonderboy, and I don't know that Wonderboy is that dude anymore. Jeff Neal, that win looks better, but again, I'm not saying. And by the way, I'm on Shavkat. I think he's a monster. I just think the overall resume isn't there quite yet. When you look at what Belal has done in the top 10 guys he has, if you just look at Gilbert Burns, Vicente Luque, and Sean Brady, those are more impressive than any win that Shavkat has right now in terms of name value. But Dricus has Israel, he has Whitaker, and he has finishes over both of them. If he goes out and finishes Chimaev, absolutely, that guy is at that point. He's in that argument at top 4 again. And obviously we can't predict how things are going to play out for Makhachev, Pereira, and Topuria. I mean, who knows? Like I said, maybe Arman Sarukian pulls off the upset, or maybe Ankalaev gets the title shot and actually beats Pereira, and all this is a moot point. But I think at that point, Du Plessis definitely deserves that conversation of that top tier 4. I mean, I have him 5 right now, so I don't think it would be that big of a stretch to jump him to 3 or 4, depending on what happens.
Man, I would love to talk about Aspinall getting that Jones fight, but I guess it's too remote. I don't know. Because I also have Aspinall maybe a little too low. But if he gets that Jones fight and wins. Anyway, people let us know. Let us know in the comments.
Get that Jones fight. He's not going to get that Stipe fight after Stipe beats John? What are you talking about?
I'm just throwing out random stuff here. You're right. There's so many.
You act like it's a foregone conclusion. What's going on?
So many possibilities. All right, guys, let's just we'll close out the show here with a follow-up to a segment we had on our most recent episode of the Rankings podcast. We had to speculate a little bit on what would happen with Francis coming back at PFL, Battle of the Giants. Very successful. Sure enough, still keeping that streak going, still the lineal heavyweight champion. Destroyed Renan Ferreira, someone who we had in the top 10, I think, a consensus top 10 fighter. So it looked very good. Now, when I asked Jed about this on the last episode, unfortunately, he's not available right now, but when I asked him last time, he said Tom, no matter what, would stay number 1, no matter what happened at Battle of the Giants. But, and you guys can't see this, but our staff can, Jed actually put Francis number 1 now on his heavyweight ranking. So his exact wording was that Ferreira will not be a meaningful enough win to overcome Aspinall's recent accomplishments. But apparently that changed, and that's okay. Again, if anything, that shows how the fluctuation in the rankings, how quickly things can change in MMA. But Dame, we do have you here. You are a big Jon Jones advocate. You, if it were up to you, you would not have removed him from the number 1 spot, I don't think, if it were not for inactivity. So now I present to you, because you didn't even get to be part of this discussion last episode. We had Mike here. We didn't have Damon. Does Jon Jones regain the number 1 spot with a win against Stipe Miocic, no matter what?
And to that, I'd have to double check my rankings when it happened, but I'm pretty sure I did put Tom Aspinall over Jon Jones when he beat Curtis Blades. I think I did jump him over Jon Jones, and then Jon got eliminated at that point with the inactivity. So to answer your question, no, because I have Tom Aspinall number one, and Tom Aspinall will continue to be number one until he loses, because I think he has the more impressive resume right now. I love Stipe. You'll not find a bigger Stipe. I'm an Ohio guy. Of course I love Stipe. And it's still, I think it's a more meaningful win than people want to give it credit for. I understand he's been out for 4 years. I understand he's coming off a loss. I understand all that. But he's still, heavyweights traditionally fight longer. They fight older. I still think it's a meaningful win. But to me, it's still not as meaningful of a win as what Tom Aspinall's been doing recently. I think Jon would probably, in my estimation, if he beats Stipe, would jump to number 2 behind Aspinall. And I think at this point, Francis Ngannou is entering patchy mix Johnny Eblin territory where he just can't get quality wins outside the UFC. And even further so for Francis, because unless he fights Anatoly Malikin, which I don't think is ever going to happen, there's no one for him to fight that's going to be like a really good win right now at heavyweight for Francis. Unless somebody leaves the UFC and signs with PFL, Francis is kind of stuck in no man's land. He's getting by right now. Like the Reina Ferreira win was good, I guess, but what really got him back to number 2 in my rankings was his wins over Curtis Blades and Cyril Gane in the UFC. He just was out inactivity wise. But Ngannou's in that no man's land now. He has no one to fight. He could go out and beat the brakes off Dennis Goltsoff and whatever that Popov guy's name is, and everyone else is on the entire PFL roster right now. It's not going to be more meaningful than what Tom Aspinall is doing right now at heavyweight. So I would probably put Jones at number 2, not number 1. But Francis is the guy that I feel like is kind of stuck because I don't think he'll ever get higher than number 2 again.
Damn. Yeah, I thought you'd push a lot harder for Jones there, but that was real talk, Damon. I respect it. I said we didn't have Jed here, who had Francis number 1. Fortunately, we do have a panelist who put Francis number 1. Our own Casey Leydon decided to go the full Monty and not just bring Francis back into the rankings, but give him the number 1 spot. You have Francis 1, Aspinall 2, and Volkov has a fight coming up 3. Where will Jon Jones land with you in a best case scenario, Casey, where let's say he just destroys Stipe Miocic? Where do we do with Jon Jones? And doesn't retire or doesn't immediately retire?
Best case is number 3 for me. No matter what happens, Francis number 1, Aspinall number 2. It's like 1A, 1B to be honest. And they're basically fighting for the number 3 best heavyweight in the world. If Stipe wins, he'll be there. He'll be number 3 too. So Jon and Stipe fighting for number 3.
We are going to get hard banned by Dana White because he does not want to hear this talk. He is hyping this up.
I'm not artificial intelligence. I'm just a human being.
You are real intelligence. He is hyping this up as the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the world, going up against the greatest heavyweight in MMA history. And we are. And Casey, said they are fighting to be.
Oh. The number 1 pound for pound is it number 1 pound for pound in the world? Is that what he's?
He thinks if Jon Jones. I don't know if you've heard him.
Islam Bolt fought, wasn't that? I thought that was for pound number 1 in the world.
It was. That was before the Cyril Gane Jon Jones fight. No,
the second one.
Before. That was before Jon Jones came back. Yeah, that was before Jon Jones.
That was before Jon.
The first Volkanovski. Yeah, the first Volkanovski fight. Yeah. So yes, it changed. It changed like that. He came back, dominated Cyril Gane. Anyone who enters a room with him. But Casey, you are saying that this fight is nothing but for the number 3th heavyweight in the world?
Yeah. Dude, what an accomplishment to be the 3rd best baddest of all
I will say this though, and again, my ranking of Francis is more based upon what he did before, like beating Curtis Blades, beating Cyril Gane, beating Stipe when he did. Beating Reina Ferreira is fine. Reinan's what he is. He's a prospect who had 3 or 4 losses in a row before he got 3 wins in a row. So I don't rank Ferreira very high. The only reason I think he cracked the top 15 is because heavyweight outside of the top 10 is just a bad division. But Francis to me is stuck in no man's land because I think beating Stipe at 41 and off 4 years absence is still a much more meaningful win than beating Reina Ferreira.
I just don't agree with that. But fair.
Reina Ferreira, listen, he has a real good win over a light heavyweight in Ryan Bader. I know that's a quality win. But yeah, I mean, come on now. Hayden Ferreira, like he's like isn't he like 4-3 in his last 7 fights or something? Like I don't get it. Like it was a good win. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad Francis is back, but I don't think Francis can ever climb higher. Like in my opinion, like you can't just hold on to the spot by beating bums. And if he beats Dennis Goltsoff or Popov, whatever his name is,
I'm just imagining seeing Hayden Ferreira walking like 6'9", Hayden Ferreira. 270 pounds, like, bum. He's not. I mean, I get it. He doesn't have the UFC resume, but I have no doubt that Hayden Ferreira is a legitimate top 10 guy.
Anatoly Malikin has a fight coming up next week against Rug Omar Kane. Rug has a better win on his resume than Hayden Ferreira. He has a win over Marcus Buchecha, who is a legit world-class jiu-jitsu. Like, I think that's a better win than anything that Ferreira has on his record. Like, right now, I think I'm just saying, like Malikin would have a better win on his resume beating Rug than I think Hayden Ferreira has right now.
Yeah. Well, this is.
I was actually high on Ryan Bader as a heavyweight. I think most 205ers. I mean, most 205ers are just heavyweights that diet. You know, that's all. That's all. I think actually, I know it's easy to crap on Ryan Bader's career and stuff because when he loses, he loses big. But I like Ryan. I think Ryan. I agree. I think actually Ryan was a better heavyweight. But again, it's just the totality of the resume. Like I can't ignore Ryan's entire. Like I understand just at heavyweight, but again, even at heavyweight, like he beat a 49-year-old Fedor a couple times. You know, he beat. Who else did? Like he beat Matt Mitrione. Like I'm just saying. Like, I'm not trying to diminish him.
They couldn't even touch him. They couldn't even land a strike on him, Damon.
I'm probably the biggest Ryan Bader stan out here in terms of like guys continuously push his career. But I'm just saying, like, we're picking apart the wins. That's all I'm saying. Like, I think, again, Hayden Ferreira beating Ryan, yes, it mattered, but yeah.
And I think the way he did it too, it's not just the wins. It was, but whatever. Yeah, I get it. I see the argument. I see it.
Damon, like I said, I pulled up his record now. Hayden Ferreira's last 4 wins came over Mateus Scheifele, Maurice Green, Dennis Goltsoff, who is Dennis Goltsoff, and Ryan Bader. He has one win in there, and that's Ryan Bader. And then he has a loss, and now granted, a couple of those losses got overturned because his opponents were on every drug under the sun, but he has a loss to Ante Delija, which that's what Tom Aspinall brought up. He's like, he lost to Ante, like how, like he's not that, and then Rizvan Kuniev, who just got into the UFC off the Contender Series, and Klidson Abreu. I'm just saying, like, those are 3 losses he had. Now, again, 2 of them got overturned for drugs, but Maurice Green, I like Maurice Green, but come on now, that's not a.
And he walked through him. He walked through him like he should have. He walked through him. He walked through Ryan Bader without breaking a sweat. So,
but what would Tom Aspinall do to Maurice Green? Like, what would
Same thing. That's why they're both good elite heavyweights, and Maurice Green is a heavyweight.
I'm just
gentlemen. How did we get from Francis Ngannou and Jon Jones to Maurice Green and Rug?
The crochet
light
boss.
is flashing. The light in the studio is flashing. Once they heard Rug, frankly, actually, that's when I was supposed to shut this down. So, guys, we will. Thank you for the discussion. Unfortunately, Jed will be back on another ranking show once his power is restored. So shout out to him. Hopefully everything turns out okay there. Looking ahead, guys, to the weekend, people watching this show, we got a lot of ranked fights, actually. We got flyweight main event, UFC Edmonton, number 4, Brandon Moreno, number 6, Amir Albazi, he's back. Number 4, women's flyweight, Aaron Blanchfield, and number 9, Rose Namajunas. Also both in the top 10 of the women's pound for pound rankings. And tied for 15 heavyweight, Derek Lewis will fight Jonata Denise. So we got some implications, guys. We love implications on the ranking show, and we got plenty of those. And then, yes, in 2 weeks, sorry to skip over UFC Vegas 100, but in a little over 2 weeks, we do have the return of Jon Jones and Stipe, and maybe we will follow up with our 3rd part of the heavyweight discussion, and maybe we'll finally have answers as to what that Jon Jones win means, if he wins, or a Stipe Miocic win. We'll have some weird clarity at the top of the heavyweight division, if that's even possible. So, thank you, Delicious Damon. Thank you, Comely E. Casey Leydon, for joining me on the ranking show. Again, we will be back probably after 309. And I just want to say to all the listeners and to all the viewers that no matter what the lists say, you guys are always number one in our hearts. So thank you, and we'll see you then.